Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I have my first video of 2023 for you. And I decided, you know, what better way to start into a new year than finally getting COVID after 3 years of not having it. It's amazing. It's bomb. I love it. You can probably tell I'm a little bit frustrated, but anyway, I luckily don't have symptoms that are that bad. I mostly just have a bit of a hard time breathing, but aside from that, I just can't smell anything, and if I do anything for more than 10 minutes, I get really exhausted. But that's pretty much it. Thanks to the science juice, thanks to being vaccinated 4 times. Really, like, I love vaccinations, I love science, it's amazing. But yeah, what are we gonna do today? Before I can give you all my year-end wrap-up videos, my stats, my looking back at my goals, my best books, my worst books, which will come in the next few days. I will probably upload those over the weekend. I first have one last video wrapping up 2022, and that is of course my December wrap-up for 2022. And I read a total of 5 books in December. I actually had quite a good final reading month. Like, I would say I gave most of the books between 3.5 and 4.5 stars in December. I read 5 books. However, there was one book that was just so fantastically shit that I'm still in awe about how bad that book is. And of course we're gonna start with that book, and that book is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. Now, if you have been on my channel in 2021, you will have seen the steep decline of Sanderson is my favorite author. Like, at the beginning of 2021 I was like, he's my favorite author. At the end of 2021 I was like, why did I ever like any of his books? They suck. Which had to do with a reread that I did of all of his books in 2021. And so at the beginning of this year there were 3 more books that I wanted to read by him. There's still 2 more books, and one of those 3 books was The Lost Metal, because I am nothing if not spiteful and stubborn when it comes to reading. So yeah, I just wanted to finish the Wax and Wayne series. I kind of went into the book knowing I wouldn't like it very much, and oh boy, did I like it even less than I thought. Like I thought that I might be able to give it like a 2.5 stars or something. No, I gave it like 0.25 stars on Storygraph, because if I could give this book 0 stars, I would give it 0 stars. Now, why did I not like this book? First of all, Sanderson has lost any ability to write good books. Like, I'm sorry. And I think I've seen this trend generally. Sadly, I have not really seen a decline in popularity of Brandon Sanderson. But if you look at people who read Brandon Sanderson, who don't necessarily love him, like who are not some of his all-time fans, but you know, who read Sanderson and who appreciate him, I think you might have seen a trend that a lot of those people have liked his books less and less. Like within the Stormlight Archive series, you could see that Oathbringer as well as Rhythm of War were less liked than Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. And even now with The Lost Metal, I saw quite a few negative reviews. And I think the reason for that is that, you know, at the beginning, before Sanderson got as big as he is now, he still had an editor. I honestly doubt if he has one now. Like, I know he has one from the acknowledgements at the back, but I'm very much questioning what that editor does, and if Sanderson lets that editor say anything to him. Because between Elantris and I would say Words of Radiance, his writing generally improved. His storytelling got a little bit tighter, a little bit better. Like, there was improvement to be seen in his writing. Since Words of Radiance, his writing has done a nosedive, and it's become just so bad. I doubt that he lets anyone properly edit his books. The Lost Metal read like a first draft. Like, I'm gonna give an honorable mention to Scylla, but he does not use any dialogue tags except for said. Like, no dialogue tags, no action tags, nothing. He absolutely overuses the word awesome. Like, if I had €1 for every time that Brandon Sanderson uses the word awesome, like, I wouldn't be rich, but I'd have a lot of euros. Like, a lot of euros. And it's just, it's bad. Then, in terms of storytelling, in The Lost Metal, Brandon Sanderson was more concerned in setting up the broader Cosmere and just like throwing random words at you without explaining them, than actually finding a satisfying ending to the story of Wax and Wayne. Like 2/3 of this book were more concerned with setting up future novels rather than actually talking about what is happening right now and currently. And like, Brandon Sanderson is a shit world builder in general, because throwing random words at you without explaining anything, without having the characters react in a way that they should react, because for those characters those words are just as new as for you. You wouldn't know that though, because, you know, they don't ask what those things mean. They are not said in a context where you'd think, okay, obviously they don't wonder about what this means right now. It's so bad. And like, it's honestly funny at this point because, you know, me and some friends, we have a group chat where we mostly complain about Brandon Sanderson. Not mostly, but well, mostly. Like, we complain about Brandon Sanderson a lot. It started as a group chat that was about complaining about Brandon Sanderson. And every now and again, we just are like, wait, how was that again in the Cosmere? And then one of us goes to the wiki page, either the, I think it was the 17th Shard or the Coppermind wiki page, and we Google that thing. We Google, for example, I don't know, an Order of the Knights Radiant or something. And then we go to the links down below, to the sources down below, and then we count how many of those sources are actually from books that Brandon Sanderson has written and how many of the sources are from different interviews. Guess which sources are more common? His interviews. And I'm sorry, you're not a good world builder if what you do is throw words into your books, never explain them in the books, and then explain them in interviews. Like, I'm sorry. Anyway, the third thing is, I would say mostly personal, but I don't know, it just confuses me when people like Wayne. It's a thing I have. But Wayne annoys me so much, and the fact that I now have to live with the knowledge that Wayne is into bondage is just something that I will never be able to forget anymore, and yeah. Anyway, The Lost Metal was shit. It was shit. Like, all capital letters and in cursive. It was shit. So now that I have ranted for almost 10 minutes just about The Lost Metal, let's get into the books that I actually enjoyed in December, and I'll just go in order of which I finished them. First, I have Kaikei by Vaishnavi Patel. This was the buddy read for my book club for December. My book club is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, and the book club is all about reading adult high fantasy by women and genderqueer people. And so in December, obviously, we read Kaikei, but if you want to join us for January, currently we're reading The Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette de Bodard, which is science fiction, but you know, the high fantasy rule is kind of a little bit loose. And then also there's currently a read-along going on in that book club of the Kushiel series by Jacqueline Carey. And so the link to the Discord is down below, and also the link to my announcement video of the Kushiel series is down below. So you're welcome to check both of those out. But back to Kaikei. Kaikei is a retelling kind of in a similar vein of Circe. That's at least the retelling that it's often compared to. Not in terms of plot, but in terms of concept, because both of those retellings take a very central, you know, epic of their specific cultures. In terms of Circe, that's obviously, you know, ancient Greece. In terms of Kaikei, it's Hinduism, and it takes a character from those epics. Here it's Kaikei, who appears in the Ramayana, And those characters are women that within those epics aren't pictured in a very great light and are often pictured as villainesses. In the case of Kaikeyi, within the Ramayana, the kind of main character, I don't know if an epos really necessarily has a main character, but in the Ramayana, the main character is the god Rama, and Kaikeyi is his kind of mother slash stepmother. She is one of the wives of Rama's father, and so in Kaikeyi we follow her from her youth until later in her life, I think into her 40s, maybe 50s, like around that time. I won't talk too much about my thoughts on this. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I do want to film a full review of it though. That's why I'm not going too in depth on my thoughts. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Kaikeyi as a character. I thought that she was a very nuanced and very like 3-dimensional character that, you know, I didn't always agree with the decisions she made, but that just made her even more interesting to follow. The one thing that I maybe did not 100% like about this book was the ending, but it wasn't the ending in and of itself. It was more so how the tension was built and then released towards the ending, because it didn't really feel like a climax for me where the tension just, you know, found a satisfying solution. But for me, it just felt like you had the tension building throughout the book and then it just went poof and was gone. And so that was the one thing that I was like, not the biggest fan of that, but overall I still gave it 4 stars, so I still really loved it and I can still highly recommend it. Next, I have The Godbreaker by Mike Brooks, which is the 3rd and final book in the God King Chronicles. As always, I won't really tell you about what the series is about. I will try to summarize just the first book. The setting of the first book is a place called Black Keep, and over the past decades they have had issues with raiders regularly coming and pillaging. Now, the raiders haven't come for a while. However, one day, once again, their sails are seen on the horizon. Since a few years ago there was this huge plague, Black Keep, you know, does not have the most fighters anymore, and so they're pretty fucking scared when they see the raiders again, because they know they are probably going to all die. However, when the raiders arrive, it seems they haven't come to kill everybody and they haven't come to pillage. They have come to settle and they have come in peace because they are running from something. And so the first book follows those two groups of people trying to kind of bridge their differences, while there's also some other POVs in the background setting up the bigger picture and the bigger plot. So what did I think of this 3rd book? It's kind of hard because overall I think this book was a little too ambitious for its own good. Like, by the end of the 2nd book there were so many loose threads still going on that it just was really hard to bring them all together in this last book. In a way, I thought it worked, and I kind of really liked how the finale itself went. Like, the finale itself I loved, but the issue was that you had multiple POVs set up, especially the POVs from the first book, like the main POVs from the first book, that kind of just set up the world building and kind of just set up the central plot, but then didn't really play a role anymore, or the stuff that was happening with those characters didn't really so much play a role anymore with what was happening here. And when some of those characters were dragged into the plot of this book, it just kind of felt a little bit forced, which is what I didn't personally like. Like, on the one hand, I really liked it because I love those characters still the most from all the characters in the book. But at the same time, you know, from the storytelling perspective, I thought it didn't work all that well. And there was also like 2 perspectives where I was just like, throughout all 3 books, they had like only the barest of connections to anything going on in the main plot of the 3 books. So while I loved them, I just didn't really understand. Like, you could cut those POVs from the series and it wouldn't make a difference, to be honest. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle. However, what I have to say, what I think was beautifully done was the arc of the themes of the series. Because the themes that were set up within the first book, like the clashing of differences of different cultures, was brought to an end beautifully within this last book. And actually within this story, you once again also had a build of tension that then just kind of went nowhere, where I think some people might not like it or might dislike it or might feel like it wasn't, you know, dealt with in a satisfying way, because a lot of the characters that we have started following a lot didn't really have a lot to do with the solution of the story. But I really liked it because it was very unconventional in terms of a solution to the story. So yeah, I just sometimes like unconventional solutions. So that did work for me. But overall, I would just say, you know, I gave it 3.75 stars. Probably 3 stars, 3.5 stars in terms of storytelling, if I take away most of my personal biases. But since I did still really love the characters in this book and I loved following them, 3.75 stars. But yeah, just a bit of a disappointment, not gonna lie. I would still really recommend reading the series though. Like, read at least the first book as a standalone, if nothing else. I think the first book also really works well as a standalone. So the next book I have is Not Good for Maidens by Tori Bovalino. This is a retelling of a ballad which is called The Goblin Market by, I forgot the name of the author. It's a woman or something. I don't remember the name anymore. And in this one we follow what was our main character's name, Lou, who has grown up in America, in Boston. Her aunt and her mother, however, are from England. They have fled England when they were still teenagers and they haven't gone back since, and they don't really talk about England. So Lou does not know anything about her aunt's and her mother's past. She, however, finds out about that past when her other aunt is kidnapped. That other aunt is like a few years older than her. She is as close to Lou as a sister. She comes to visit every summer and she's kidnapped. And so Lou finds out about this thing called the Goblin Market, where her aunt has been kidnapped, and Lou now has 3 days time to get her aunt back. So I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the vibes of this book. I mean, there was one thing, but I don't really feel like I'm the right person to talk about that, and I so far haven't gone out to find any reviews by Jewish reviewers. I do want to do that though, but there's always this thing, especially when it comes to goblins, and I think we're all familiar with it by now, especially when it comes to conversations around J.K. Rowling, that a lot of the tropes surrounding goblins and also a lot of other fantasy creatures are based on anti-Semitic stereotypes. And so when you have a book that is about goblins kidnapping children and kidnapping young girls, which, you know, the kidnapping of children was also something that people used as, you know, anti-Semitic propaganda. It's just something where I'm like, I don't know how well done that is. But I'm also not familiar enough with those anti-Semitic tropes to say that that's the case here or that's not the case. That's why I'm saying, like, before you read the book, or if you read the book, try to find Jewish reviewers. I did not do my due diligence and try to find any before I filmed this wrap up. But aside from that, as a story itself, I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the vibes of the story. I really liked Lou as a character. And once again, this is an ending that I think I saw some people say that they found it anticlimactic. And I get where it's coming from, but I personally really liked it because, you know, it's not this big bombastic ending. There's not really a big fight or anything. But it's just, it's not calm, but it's very unconventional, the ending, in a way. And sometimes I really like that. Sometimes I like my endings not to be epic. Sometimes I like my endings to just be like, you know, we got by. We got by, we somehow managed, and we got by. And so yeah, that's what this story pretty much is. I like Lou as a main character, as I said. Lou is also ace, so there's ace rep, there's also pansexual rep. The story is also told in 2 timelines, so we find out what happened to the mother and the aunt in the past and why they left England, and then we also follow the story that Lou is currently going through. But yeah, I think overall, if, you know, spooky vibes in urban fantasy settings are your thing, then I think this will be a book for you. And then the last book I have for my December wrap-up is The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. This one is the second book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy. The first book was The Jasmine Throne, and I think I gave this 3.5 stars. Like, I can't say too much about this because obviously it's the second book. First, I guess I should tell you what the setting of the first book is. In the first book, we follow 2 characters, mainly 2 characters. On the one hand, we follow Priya, and on the other hand, we follow Malini. Malini is a princess who was supposed to burn for her kingdom and her brother. However, she refused to go onto the pyre willingly, so her brother basically locked her up and is now drugging her. Priya starts working as her handmaiden. However, in her past she was a priestess of a now lost religion, priesthood. She kind of, like both of them, live in this country that has been conquered by this empire due to, you know, war and stuff going on in the past. And so it's about the 2 of them trying to get their due. And so the second book obviously continues on the plot from the first book. That's usually what happens in a second book, but I have to say, like, the first book wasn't one of my all-time favorite new series, but I did generally enjoy it. I especially enjoyed the romance and, you know, the chemistry between Priya and Malini, because the series is part of the Sapphic Trifecta that came out in 2021. However, in the second book, I was like, I don't know, for some reason the chemistry wasn't there for me anymore. And while there was parts of the plot that I was still really invested in and still really interested in, those were the parts of the plot that, you know, percentage-wise, you know, we got the least of. And most of it was connected to Priya, but most of it was just about characters that were connected to Priya and their POVs. Overall, I just also think that this series has too many POVs for, you know, how long it is, really. I do enjoy a lot of POVs, but it just gets too much when you then have a lot of POVs that, you know, get 1 or 2 chapters in a book and not more. And it's not just interludes, but, you know, there's just too many POVs in this story. I'm still interested to see how the series finishes. I think the 3rd book should be the last book. I do think it's a trilogy, but yeah, overall, just did not enjoy it as much as I did the first book. And so that was it for my December wrap-up. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read any of the books that I just mentioned and talked about. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to the book club I mentioned will be linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!